Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for the big match preview here on Last Word on Spurs as we build up to the battle for Europe, not the European competition we probably wanted here on Last Word on Spurs. As we look ahead to Aston Villa to come away at Villa Park on Saturday. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, as always, for taking the time out to listen to Last Word on Spurs. If you're listening to us for the first time, you find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And joining us back on this show, we've got three great returning guests to Last Word on Spurs. A man that I think is looking forward to the end of the season, as much as he always gives us a smile. We've got the wonderful Ricky Norwood back with us. Ricks, how are you, bud? You okay?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. I mean, after a win, after a little bit of change of play, after glimmers of hope, I'm good, my friend. And I'm looking forward to tonight's show.
Absolutely, mate. Listen, always having you on Last Word on Spurs. Look, a man that's still smiling. Can you believe it from what they've put him through this season on Last Word on Spurs? I can't believe it. I bet you can't either. Wonderful Ricky Norwood back on Last Word on Spurs. Joining Rick, two of our great returning favourite regular guests back on. She's always got hard-hitting opinions and she's back to give us even more. We've got the wonderful Christina Zandes on Last Word on Spurs. Christina, how you doing? You okay?
Back. Very good to be back. I wish I was having whatever Ricky was having, but yeah.
Listen, difficult to find the right vibes at the moment, but we'll definitely be trying to find them throughout the show. And also delighted to have him back on. Normally this man is always on when there's always lots to play for, depending on how you gauge lots to play for, whether it be in the Conference League or Europa League. I'll let you make that judgment on that. We've got the wonderful George Achillea back on Last One on Spurs. George, how are you, bud? You okay?
Very happy to be back. Thank you. I mean, it's been a long time. I think there was a lot of hope the last time I was back, but we'll see how the season.
Absolutely, we most certainly will do. Right, well, listen, before we get into all things Tottenham, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are delighted, always, to be sponsored by the Beavertown Corner Pin. That, of course, is the Beavertown bang opposite your South Stand. Now, a little bit of an update, as we mentioned on last week's show. We were due to bring to you a end-of-season event. Now, I think given the nature of the mood, of the result, and the fact that we were going to be planning it to be Brentford on the Saturday, and the fact that it's now been shifted to a 12:30, I think, given what that result could potentially do to us, we've decided that we are going to shift the end-of-season event to an early season preview show where we might have some more clarity on who the manager is and who the director of football is. And I can see Rick itching to come back in there. Rick, do you have an opinion on us making that decision? Is that one of the best that we've made so far?
I think it's a smart decision. You know, to have a gathering at the Beavertown, you want to have all the positive vibes and you want to have all the green shoots of positivity going into a new season with a new manager and hopefully a new era. So it's probably a very smart decision you made there, Ricks.
Well, listen, it's one of those where, quite frankly, I think we had no choice given what's been served up to us so far. Talking about serving up and what we've been given in terms of the last week or so, I think it's fair to say, I think it was the first time we saw at the weekend against Palace where we actually went into the game almost trying to guess and understand how Spurs were being tactically set up, which is quite nice, really, because I've got to say, over the course of the last, you've got to be honest and say, the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months, we go that far back, Spurs have been pretty predictable. Coming over to you, George. And look, I mean, again, credit to Ryan Mason. I know out there's a lot of people that feel Ryan Mason just purely isn't and shouldn't be in the running for the next manager of Tottenham. I'll let you come and discuss that as well. But what was your takeaways, George, from the result against Palace? It was a 1-0. Many would say it's forgettable. How would you sum it up for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't the most exciting game in the world. But what I liked about it is that sitting there throughout the whole match, I was never really that worried about Palace during the game. And I think that is credit to the way Mason set the team up. I was very surprised to see both Porro and Emerson playing. When it first came out, I assumed Emerson was going to play right centre back. And I felt like it was going to be fairly similar to Conte, where he would defend with a 5. But what I noticed that most of the time it actually seemed to be more of a 4-4-2 when we're defending, and then attacking it sort of seemed to be just a 3, and both Davis and Porro were getting forward, which I think it was quite nice to have something a little bit different. And it meant that we were pressing them quite high up. I know Mason said it himself about trying to keep them in their own half and not let them come into our final third. So yeah, it was just nice to watch, to be honest with you. I felt fairly in control during the match, and playing both Emerson and Porro, I think just, plays to both their strengths. I think it's quite common knowledge that Porro's got great attacking ability, but defensively can be a bit of a liability. And it's almost the exact opposite for Emerson. And I thought Emerson had an incredible game throughout, a complete defensive rock alongside Romero in the middle. So yeah, it was just a nice game, to be honest with you. Fairly simple win for us.
Yeah, I mean, Christina, coming over to you. Look, much has been made of Spurs in obviously Mason's second tenure in charge. I mean, now it's obviously got his first win of that new tenure. Give me your thoughts on how you feel Spurs performed against Palace and whether there were some green shoots there going into the final 3 games of this season.
I completely agree with George. It was pretty boring in the game, but like I said, like George said, it was a comfortable watch for us. Surprisingly, I was more in the honestly, Emerson Royale. I don't know how he didn't get man of the match for that game. I thought he was unbelievable, and I'm so glad that he's back and everyone's loving him again. And Pedro Porro as well. I really see some huge potential in that guy. I think he's going to be a massive player for us next season. Just that assist from Kane was unbelievable. Yeah, it's good potential. But at the end of the day, I just think Mason's just here just to finish the season for us. So hopefully he can finish as much, as great as he can. It's hard for me to say that at the moment, but yeah, I think we just need to finish off as well as we can so far, and crack on with it. Basically, get the season done.
It's funny you say that. I mean, I can't help but saying is that Ricks, we recorded on an evening where Inter Milan and AC Milan are facing off in the Champions League. I mean, many comments alluding to the fact that could and maybe should have been us. You was with us there that night where Spurs did go out to the Champions League. Probably the lowest I've seen you on Last Word on Spurs, definitely in the 5-6 years that I've known you personally. When you look at these last 3 games and the way Mason has adapted and changed the system, are you still intact and still kind of in game mode at the moment with Tottenham, or have you zoned out in terms of what's left of the season for you?
No, you know what, Ricks and the panel and everybody listening, I've actually got fed up of being angry and upset with my team. Like, I love loving my team. I love trying to find a bit of positivity. I love trying to find a new angle to look at things. We're not going to win every game, and not every game's going to go our way. What I was really impressed by Mason on the weekend is that, firstly, he dropped Dyer. Now, I don't want to criticize Dyer and kind of put everything on his shoulders right now. But with his form and with his performances, he deserved to be dropped, at least rested, or whatever the case may be. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that he'd done that, switched to a more comfortable kind of back 4, back 3, with Romero in the center of that, Royale on the right side, and Longley as well. I think we haven't really seen the best of Longley because the back 3 has been so disjointed and there's been so many goals conceded. So to see Romero and Longley playing alongside each other, I think we got to see a bit more of what Longley can bring to this Tottenham side, especially if we are going to sign him. And he actually dropped Kulusevski, which has been a mainstay for a long time. And again, he's been out of form. So to put Richarlison up there, and to have like Sonny whipping down the wing, up and down, left, right, and centre, as attacking as well as defensive. Porro with his crosses as well, and his attacking flair. It was nice to see. And I know a lot are saying that it was a boring game. It was a boring 1-0. But I mean, after the last 3 games that we've played, after conceding 15 goals in 15 minutes, do you know what I mean? Like combined, I don't know what it was, but it was a ton of goals, and that we shipped in. So to see us be a bit solid, a bit resilient, to see us playing high up the field, and not everything was right. They've only had a week to kind of prepare for that game against Palace. But for me, there was definitely green shoots there. And on Mason, he's a Tottenham boy through and through. He's been assistant to and seen a lot of the good that's happened at Tottenham under Poch. He was a player under Poch, but he believes in what the ethos that Poch brought to the table. He's also worked alongside Mourinho and now Conte. We won't mention Nuno. But so you could see that him as a assistant coach or as a manager, he had ideas. He wanted to do things the Tottenham way, and it's only the beginning. But you know, especially when we was linked to a company, I would have preferred Mason over company, you know, just because he is Tottenham through and through, because he would love to have that job, because he would do everything in his power to kind of bring that Tottenham way back. And we've been a mishmash of a team for the last 4 seasons. You know, ever since Poch left, we've been a mishmash of a team. We didn't know, we haven't had no clear ideas. We haven't had no clear way of playing. We haven't had no ethos, and this word culture that keeps coming up. And I think he's been a great kind of calming influence and a great kind of person to start to seed those things that we attribute as Tottenham Hotspur back into that side. You know, Conte said with his selfish comments a long time ago, and he directed that towards the players. But if you've got no clear direction, how is anybody supposed to pull together and go in one direction? How are you supposed to pull on the same rope? If there's so many different ideas and everything's going awry, well, you're only going to pull when you want to pull on that rope, you know. And sometimes you know, you can take 2 days off and be like, yeah, well, he's pulling it today, you know what I mean? He got the praise from the manager, or he keeps getting a start. Why am I pulling? And I think with Mason, he's brought the side back together again. At least you can see them playing for him, and at least you can see them trying new stuff and holding some of those players that are out of form accountable, as in dropping them and putting somebody else in there. That's all we've asked for all season. So for me, even though it was a boring game, I thought it was a fantastic game, because that's exactly what we needed. We needed to see the back line be solid. We needed a keeper in there that could play with his feet, but was also ready for the shot stopping saves. The midfield is comme ci, comme ça. But, you know, at least we got to see that attacking play from us, you know, and we got a 1-0 win, and it was a very kind of vital win. I think it's an important win for the end of the season, whatever we can achieve with what the end of the season brings.
You know, it's interesting, George, coming over to you. Obviously, a lot has been made in terms of Mason's second tenure, and arguably whether, had he been given the job at the time when Stellini got it, would Spurs still be in a potential race for a Champions League finish? Now, again, this debate always sparks a lot of different, you know, confliction and I'd say confrontation amongst some fans. Do you think, George, Mason and what he's done so far, do you think he deserves to be in the conversation for the next manager?
Look, I think he definitely deserves to be in the conversation at least, but just for me personally, I don't think he should be number one choice. I think mainly it's a shame because, like you said, if he came in as the manager straight away when Stellini was appointed, we might have a better understanding of how maybe Mason reacts to certain games. Like, obviously, it was amazing to come back to get the draw in the end against Man U, and potentially could have won that game as well. And then good to see it's a tactical change in the Palace game. But unfortunately, I just don't feel like we have enough games yet to sort of really test him to see how he reacts in certain situations. And I feel like, knowing us as, you know, being Spurs fans, we're not exactly the most patient at the moment, especially. I think it's a really big ask for him to come in as the full-time manager, to have the whole fan base back him for the next few years. Because look, even if you look at Arteta, who managed to learn under Pep, it took him 3 years really to properly get that Arsenal team ticking, and with a lot of money as well, by the way. I just personally would like to. It's a tough one because you want to just stick around, but at the end of the day, for him to become a top manager, I think he sort of needs to almost earn his flowers elsewhere and actually see if he can implement his ideas in other clubs, rather than, you know, maybe just sticking around as an assistant. And he might not have as much of a voice as assistant at our club, and maybe some way down the line he could come back as a Spurs manager. Who knows? But I think right now it just might be a bit too soon, considering where we want our club to be pretty soon. I just don't know if we have the time for him to be able to learn from his mistakes and then build from it again and then bring in new players. So, yeah, I think, it was great to see him try something different and it worked well. I just think he needs more time to really, truly develop his managerial skills, and I'll be happy to see him in the future as a Spurs manager. But I think, just me personally right now, I'd rather have someone a little bit more experienced in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting coming to you, Christina. You could argue that definitely in relation to Enoch and Daniel Levy, that ultimately the stock is probably the lowest ever been in terms of support at the moment. And therefore, it does feel that obviously maybe going for someone like a Ryan Mason, is that a massive, massive gamble, given some of the, you'd say, arguably established more names out there that you feel. I think as a fan base, we have, I call them the Twitter fan base, that would like the glamorous names that would essentially, you do believe they would bring you success, but there's no guarantee to that. Spurs have had Jose Mourinho, they've had Antonio Conte, and here we are still waiting for a trophy. Arguably, like I say, it was close to become under Pochettino. What do you feel for you, Christian, in terms of Ryan Mason? Do you feel it is arguably just too soon and Spurs will need to go with a more established name, given the current status and state of the club right now and the disconnection with the fan base?
You know what? We've had the big names at our club, and it's clearly just doesn't work for us at all. And with all these big managers that have come in, they have failed at Tottenham, of course. And it's, to me, I feel that we need someone similar to Mason, because I want someone to look at and watch us play and see exactly what each individual can do and set them up to what is suited for those players. I just don't think I don't think we can have a manager that is strict on, with how just their system. We need to have a manager that wants to look at us and build a system for individually for those players that they know is going to work for them. Someone like Mason is too early, in my opinion. If he went elsewhere and did, I don't know, two years of managing another team elsewhere, and then maybe potentially he could come back. But that's why, for me, I felt like Vincent Kompany would have been a great opportunity for us. It's someone that we need to. It's just someone that needs to just care about the club. I like just care about the players. I don't know what it is. It's just this strict system with all the big managers that we've had in the past. It just doesn't work out for us. It hasn't, and they've come in and they've failed. It's to me, it's a bit of an embarrassment for all of us. So someone literally Kompany I felt would have been absolutely great, in my opinion. He's got Burnley. They've now promoted to the Premier League, and I felt like that could have been a great opportunity for us to have got someone like him. But for Mason, I think go and get some more experience, and then hope maybe for the future he could potentially be a new manager. And I would happily have him. It's too early for me.
It's interesting with Mason because, again, the guy is he's 31. I think Arteta was, in his 40s when he took the Arsenal job. We can't discount the fact that obviously Ryan's career was cut massively short from a playing perspective of what happened to him with that head collision. He would argue, obviously, he's done a lot of coaching already and experience. He's had 5 years behind him. He's been around the likes of Nuno, for whatever that was worth, Conte, of course, and Jose. He would have learned a lot, during that period. And I've made that argument with Ryan that also would have seen a lot of what was wrong. And again, my worry is that, he's been around a lot of losing managers and losing periods. And again, my worry is, it's hard, as George, I think, referred to it there. I've not seen enough period of games to really test him to really work out if he's quite ready yet. I know many feel that maybe we're losing someone special by not appointing him right now. But I think the argument is that where Tottenham are at the moment and the calibre of players they've got, I look at the likes of Romero, Bentancur, Doji coming in as well. Heung-min Son, Harry Kane. I know obviously Harry's a close friend of Ryan's, but you do need to have someone there that I think has got the ultimate respect for the players. I know, again, I'm contradicting what I say here because you've had Conte and Mourinho and how has that worked out, but I also am of the opinion that I just think it's too early for Mason. I do agree that it would have been great to have seen him got the job at the time when Stellini got it, where he would have got a decent run of games, and you would actually see how he would have been fared then into a battle for the Champions League, which Spurs would have still been in. Spurs would have been in that race for the Champions League because at a point where Stellini was given the job, Spurs were in that race. So it is unfortunately one of those things where, look, everyone will have different opinions. We shall see, of course, how Ryan gets on those last 3 games and Rick's come back in there for us.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I won't mention which legend I was speaking to, but when I went down to the Man United game, I managed to speak to a Spurs legend, and we were speaking about the managerial situation. And the one thing that he said was wrong. and what's going to ride the last couple of years is that we've had big time managers come in with big ideas, but the one thing that they've done as soon as they've come in, and this is being Mourinho and Conte especially, is they haven't embedded themselves in the Tottenham way or the Tottenham style or the Tottenham ethos or philosophy or our history. They've actually kind of ripped everything up, and they've tried to force their ways and their systems and their philosophy on us. Now, there is always, when I was speaking to this legend, there was always a bit of kind of adaptation, right? So you can bring what you're bringing, but also if you knew the history and you knew the philosophy of how we like to play and in what style we like to play it, and have an actual Tottenham philosophy, and then you kind of tweak it with your own ideas and your own discipline and your own ways, then maybe we would have seen a bit more success. But the fact that the managers that have come in, the high profile managers, they've kind of turned their nose up at the quote unquote Tottenham way and just kind of tried to do it theirs, and it just hasn't worked. And I think that's a big thing as well with the next manager that does come in. I mean, I totally agree with you all in the sense of it's probably too early for Mace to take the reins, but for somebody who is embedded in the club, look, to me, Kompany didn't inspire me. Xabi Alonso doesn't inspire me. Enrique doesn't really inspire me. Arne Slot doesn't inspire me. The only two that I was ever interested in was Pochettino, number one, and then if we can't get him, then Nagelsmann, because Nagelsmann for me ticks every single box going. Now, if we don't get any of those two, then my thing is this: are we going to be wasting an extra year or two with a manager that comes in and does the same thing as Conte and Mourinho, that comes in, doesn't embed themselves, doesn't know any of the philosophy, history, and everything else that I just said, and comes in and goes, right, this is what we're doing, and kind of tries to force his way on us again? And then what happens then? Are we just wasting time until somebody comes up? So with the people on the list that I'm not personally inspired by, if it ain't for Nagelsmann, then to kind of learn on the job with Mason, somebody who does really love this club, okay? And I've mentioned this a couple of times. He done the High Performance podcast, and I kind of implore everybody to go and just listen to that, just because he is a Tottenham boy through and through, but you'll get to learn about his journey, his mindset, what kind of what rings true to him. He talks about energy, he talks about attitude, he talks about wanting to be there, playing the dream. He speaks about when he had birthdays and he blew out the candles, he used to dream of playing and scoring for Tottenham. These are the things, do you know what I mean? And also with the managers that he's worked under and alongside, including Nuno, he's already seen what mistakes that they've made and where they've gone wrong. So they've all made the mistakes for him. And he, of course, as a young manager, whatever happens, he's going to make mistakes. And that's the way that he learns. But somebody who is a Tottenham boy through and through, that has all of those things that I listed: philosophy, history, way, do you know what I mean? He wants to be there. He wants to achieve. He wants to do something different. And he's holding people to account as well. He's not just doing Ryan mates on. Dyer's a mate of his. Played alongside him, worked alongside him. He's been there for a long time. That is a hard decision to make, to drop Eric Dyer, but he done it. So he's showing us that there is a bit about him. And if it comes down to not the top two choices, Pochettino, probably guy in Chelsea, Nagelsmann, who knows right now, a bit up in the air. If it ain't those two, then I would kind of take learning on the job with Ryan Mason, somebody who is entrenched in all of that way and would work tirelessly to give us the success and the brand of football that we want.
Listen, it's an impassioned speech there, Rick. It really, really is. I think, again, with Ryan, it's one of those where we'll see, obviously, where the season goes and how it ends. We're going to touch back on the managerial debate and director of football debate a bit later in the show. But what we are going to do next, we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. And taking into that break, you're going to hear an interview from Harry Kane, who discusses the culture at Tottenham and I would say, in his words, willingness to try and improve that. So there you go. George, let's kick off this section with you. So Harry Kane is given 2 interviews in the space of 2 or 3 days, interestingly, at a time where his speculation over his future is rife. We seem to be talking about a lot on Last Word on Spurs. Kane says he wants to help Spurs be more consistent and successful in the culture at the club. His latest goal for Kane, of course, meant he was the first player to score 10 headed goals in the Premier League and the only player to net 100 goals, both home and away. That, of course, coupled with the fact that he now has also become the second highest goal scorer on 209, despite doing that in just 317 appearances, which is quite remarkable. Give me your thinking, Georgia, what you took away from the interview with Harry Kane, where admittedly said there's a lot that needs to be changing in the club. And as fans who've had those open, honest conversations here on Last Word on Spurs, and I know on many different channels, there's also been those conversations that a lot has to change behind the scenes. It seems that he's making that point that they're aware of that. They know things need to change. Ultimately, George, do you think he's the man to drive that change and be here to see that?
Listen, I think he's got a screw loose in his head because it sounds like he wants to be with us forever, which is just which is just mental. Like I love this guy to bits, man. And look, part of me is a little bit pessimistic that it's maybe him trying to make up a little bit for the whole Man City saga, where he sort of didn't turn up to training, whatever. I don't know if he's maybe more going the other way and trying to make it seem like he is is proper Spurs before potentially maybe departing in the summer. But look, at the end of the day, he's like grown up with the club and with his family as the club. And I think he genuinely does care about Spurs, whether he is going to be here or not. So I think at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we can be able to keep Kane, but still obviously grow the club and bring back the whole, like everyone's saying, the Spurs way and the philosophy back, and maybe the more attacking style football that the fans will enjoy, but also will help us get results as well. And he just seems quite passionate about where we are, and I'm hoping that he maybe does get to have a chat with a proper chat with Levy during the pre-season, and maybe see if things can be a little bit different. We say this every year, but at the end of the day, like Kane he's getting a bit older. He's probably wants to be rooted in the club more and thinking about his career in the future. And I think if there's a man to get behind when effectively starting this rebuild that we need to do, then I think that there's no reason why it can't be him through and through. Whether that's the case of having to bring in the right manager, the right director of football to keep him happy, or maybe enough so that you never know, if we do win a trophy next year, does that mean then Kane signs a new deal when he does stick with us? Or like, for me personally, I think we need to try and keep him this summer regardless. I'd rather him see out his contract than even getting the money, because right now, with the way we are, I don't trust us to necessarily spend the money correctly. But yeah, man, for me, he just seems passionate and cares about the club. And I would like to be able to see him stay with us for the indefinite future, and hopefully we get back to happy winning ways.
Yeah, I mean, Christina, coming over to you. Look, I mean, the way he's talking, it seems to indicate that he's going to be here beyond the summer, which again, I have to say for Harry, and part of me feels for him, because I think we have failed him as a club on several different occasions. But again, I'll caveat that and say Kane has been part of a number of teams that have reached semi-finals and finals that have also not got over the line. So interested to get your thoughts on, the interview there from Harry, and whether you feel he's going to oversee some form of a real transformative change at the football club.
I mean, how much do you reckon Levy was behind that camera when he was doing that interview? But I was really shocked when I heard what he said. But at the same time, I do think he does care for the club. 100% he does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lasted this long with us. I feel like you just said, Ricky, I do feel really sorry for him. If that guy goes on to not winning anything in his career, I would be like, I just feel like we have literally wasted one of the biggest talents at our club. He's literally done so much as he already, all these, the record breaking and everything like that, even for his England career. It's unbelievable how much he has achieved individually himself. But as a club, we have failed him massively. Let's not forget though, we have been involved in finals. We have, we can't forget that. And to be honest, in my opinion, again, he didn't really turn up in them finals either. But that's why I don't want to blame it just on him. It's the whole team we need to think about as well. And we needed to build that around with all the players that we had, but we didn't. And Harry Kane, obviously being one of the main ones, we didn't help him at all. So yeah, I would be very surprised if he does stay, but I got a feeling actually he will stay till the end of his contract. But Oh man, I would be heartbroken the day that he does leave though. There's no one like Harry Kane, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Rich. Coming over to you, look, he says that from his end, it's important. It's important moment for the club to feel a connection again with the fans. Who I know have been frustrated with these moments. We need to try and rebuild that relationship back up and try and push all in the same direction. And again, I think for those out there that maybe feel the club is completely and utterly blind as to what's being said online during different podcasts and shows, I think they're acutely aware just how unhappy a lot of the fan base is right now. And for Kane to come out and give this interview, I'd be absolutely baffled if you're telling me that in 3 months' time he's not going to be a Spurs player, because otherwise, why give an interview like this? It would be absolutely, utterly bizarre. What do you take from it from you, Rix? And do you feel in any way this is a massive hint that he will at least commit to the club for that last season and see out his contract, and then whatever will be from there will be?
First and foremost, Harry Kane's a Tottenham boy, born and bred Tottenham boy. You know, you cut him and he bleeds blue and white. And you see the pain on his face when it's not going the right way. You see the frustration. You also see him grab the team by the scruff of the neck. Not all the time, but the majority. You know, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen through Harry. And I think there's nothing more, and he said it before, there's nothing more that he would like than lifting trophies with Tottenham with a cockle on his chest. Do you know what I mean? In front of our fans, because as a fan growing up himself, he knows what a tough time we've had with it all, with the stigma, with the Spursy, with the tags, with the bottles, with the everything that we get. I mean, maybe every fan base feels this way, but I think we are one of the most kind of hated teams in the Premier League, you know, from other Premier League supporters. And the fact that we have a gem like Harry Kane really upsets those other supporters. You know, they all have been baying for him to leave ever since the very first season. And what was the quote at the end of that season? One season wonder. And what has he done ever since then? He's gone on to prove everybody wrong and kind of kill every single record going. And he's still been there every single year. He's been linked with Man United, and he still starts the season with a cockerel on his chest and the number 10 on his back. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I would love him to stay. And I kind of feel that he is hinting that. The only apprehension that I get is a terrible, terrible memory of, I don't even know how to say his name anymore. A centre-back that went to the Gooners. I won't say his name. But before the FA Cup, I think it was a semi-final, but I think it was before that. I remember, I think it must have been a week or two before that, and he was going to leave on a free if he didn't sign, but he done a similar interview in the sense that everything that he was saying was pointed towards him staying with Tottenham. At the end of that season, he then moved across North London, and that's the only apprehension that I kind of have, is that, like George was saying a bit earlier, is he going full kind of Tottenham and then going, guys, look, the club made a decision. They decided to take this offer. I'm going to go, and everybody's going to wish him well, same way. Do you know what I mean? So that's the only apprehension that I have. And the very worst idea that I could possibly have is, you know, if he does stay next season, goes on a free, and then goes to Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? With Pochettino, and it's a terrible thought to have, and I think it would be worse than the defender that went to North London. I think it'd be worse than that, but especially because he's our talisman. He's been there for so long, captain, record holder. You know, everything that he means to Tottenham. But if he went across and started wearing the blue of Chelsea, I think it would bloody well, you might as well just put me in the ground now. I'm telling you. So, but everything that I kind of saw in his face and from his body language and from his tone of voice said that he wants to sort the problem, and that he's been a part of the problem. Like Christina was saying there earlier, he's been in finals where he hasn't technically quote unquote shown up. He hasn't had the chances, or he hasn't been able to put them away. He hasn't been able to kind of get the success that he and all of us want. And I think that he wants to fix that problem. I think he sees it, and he wants to be a part of the process of fixing that problem, because I think, as all of us know, over the last 4 years, especially since Poch left, we've definitely lost our way. And I think he wants to fix it. He wants to be a part of the solution. And let's hope that the club and the board and the people that he can speak to kind of listen to him. And if they don't recognize it themselves, and I'm sure they do at this point, but I hope he can be a part of that solution. And I hope that he does sign an extra extension and he stays with us for the years to come.
There's before I do move on, Rick's very famous man on the screen there, Andy Costa. I've got we weren't even there for it. And a lovely birthday, Rick. We must add that as well.
Oh, mate, yeah,
Good
it was a
event.
great birthday. It was a great birthday, and Costa, he was a sneaky little shizer. He distracted me with the Liverpool game. We was in the pub at one point, and then we was going to the other venue, and at 3-0 down, part of me was like, look, we might as well go now. And he's like, look, it's all right. Let's watch it. Let's see what happens. You know what I mean? And then it
The rest
ended
is
up being
history.
a bit of a surprise party. And a big thank you to Darren Hart as well, who and my missus and my sister, who kind of pulled everything together and made it happen. And I didn't have a clue, but yes, by the end of the night, I was rocking.
And I have to apologise, mate. I was meant to be there. Then the Liverpool game, the 2-hour show, killed us, and it was done
No
at
worries,
10:30.
bro.
But listen, mate, we're looking
No.
forward to hopefully more for sure. George, let me come over to
Absolutely.
you. You were shaking your head there, George, at the thought when Ricky was saying about Pochettino and a link up with Chelsea. I mean,
Please no.
many people again are saying this in the comments that ultimately that would massively tarnish the man's legacy. You know, Levy has insinuated in that recent interview with the Cambridge, obviously interview that he gave, that essentially Kane could have a statue and needs to consider also whether, you know, being a legend at a club would be bigger than winning trophies. Look, I mean, for me, I can't see why he shouldn't have both. I can't see why he couldn't achieve both at Tottenham had we made the right appointments and had we given, you know, some real backing to that team when ultimately Spurs were on the cusp and on the brink of success. What do you think, George, in terms of, as Ricky mentions there, that concern about the Chelsea link? Do you think ultimately now it's time to prove to Harry, I don't know how many times I've said this, that we are ultimately very serious and we are going to do our best now to try with the next appointment to get things back on track? I feel like I've said that about 4 or 5 times, I must add, on Last Word on Spurs.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? Probably.
I mean, look, I don't think he'll go to Chelsea. I think that definitely would sort of ruin his legacy a little bit. And I think as well, we've got to remember, I think Kane is evolving his game beautifully so that he's not. Sometimes when we talk about him, with obviously he's only got 1 year left on his contract, but we talk as if that he's only got 1 year left of being at the top of his game. And I'm not being funny. I think he's doing what Rooney did, but better, being able to transition himself into a creator, not just a goal scorer. He's not relying on pace for his game or anything, so his career can last longer. A lot of the time, you'd see a lot of the players that fall off quickly tend to rely on their athletic abilities a lot more, whereas I feel like Kane is just too clever for that, and I think he'll be able to be at the top of his game for at least the next 3 or 4 years, until he's at least 34, especially with players getting older and older now. So I think we do need to sort of get the decisions right in the summer. Like you said, we're saying this so much, but we need to be able to prove to him that, look, you are going to potentially win something here. I think in my head, the only way I can see this summer playing out is it's Man United or no one for me as to where he's going to go, because one, they're the only team that's willing to fork up the cash that we're asking for in the first place. Two, I mean, I think we all need to be Liverpool fans until the end of the season and hope they get top 4 over Man U, so then he's less likely to go there. But as well, I think a lot of people forget he's a Chingford boy through and through, and I think he's got his 4th kid on the way. I can't see him personally moving abroad, especially if it's going to be for like 2 or 3 years, whether that's to a Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. Yes, he's obviously going to have a much higher chance at a Champions League trophy, but let's say Bayern Munich, for example, if they don't win the Champions League, I don't think he's going to get the same fulfillment of getting a Bundesliga there, which they do every year anyway, than to actually try and win something at the club that he's adored his whole life. And I think, again, like I said, in terms of in the Premier League, he won't go to Chelsea or Arsenal. I think that would totally ruin his legacy at Spurs. Man City obviously already have Haaland and Alvarez, so there's no room for him there. Liverpool, but arguably probably could do with a striker, but they're not going to be able to fork up the cash that we're looking for, given they're going to need a whole massive midfield overhaul in the summer. And that effectively only really leaves Man United that actually need him and could afford him. So I think if we can almost get past this summer, I think it can hopefully give us next season to either really prove to him that there is something happening in this transition, or even just win a trophy next year. If we win the Conference League and we win it next year, if we win the League Cup or something like that, then I think that sort of puts us on the right path to be able to convince him to sign a new contract anyway. Or the only other scenario is that he does sign a new contract this summer, but with a much lower release clause allowing him to leave in next summer for a bit of cash. But yeah, I think for me personally, I think there's only one or two ways it's going this summer.
Yeah, we shall keep an eye and obviously cool see how it pans out with Harry. Right, guys, next up, the managerial and director of football search and how far along the lines we are with that. Christina, to open up with you, we understand Spurs chairman Daniel Levy is considering a move for Brentford's technical director Lee Dykes as he looks to replace Fabio Paratici, an appointment that could also help Julian Nagelsmann regarding the vacant managerial position. Now, there's been a couple of different links to actually the managing director of football this week. Spurs also linked to Jonas Spurs as a number of the sporting directors Spurs are looking at. Spurs is a global sporting director, and a number of clubs, including Hertha BSC, Genoa, Standard Liège, and Melbourne Victory, have also looked at him. There has been reported contact in the last few weeks, but nothing concrete as of yet. Now, of course, in any logical situation, you'd have the managing director or director of football appoint the manager. And at Tottenham, we're not too sure what's coming first, which does sound absolutely crazy because in any real business of any real decent succession plan, you look at the likes of Brentford and Brighton, the director of football lines up the manager because it fits intact with the philosophy. At Tottenham, we're not sure which one is coming first, which I think, again, screams to you just the utter madness behind the scenes at Tottenham. What do you think is going on behind the scenes, and how do you see this panning out in both the search of the director of football and the manager at the moment?
I think there's actually a lot going on at the moment. We just don't know about it. I was talking to someone about this recently, and I actually think we might spend quite big this summer. I don't know why, but I just feel with what's happened this season, I think Levy is just going to fork it all out. I think this summer, with a lot of the Levy out sort of protests and stuff that have been going on recently, I feel like that has grown a lot. And that's what I've just had, like, a lot of conversations with people, and even they feel the same. They think that we're gonna just he's gonna try and cover it up. I think Levy try and cover his back, I think, this season. Do you know what? This is such a weird. We're just such a mess at the moment, though, because we as fans, we have no idea what our plan is at all. There's been nothing said. It's just all behind the scenes. But I want to be positive on this, and I want to say that there is a lot going on that we have no idea about. I think it's all going to be hush hush. But I think with what's been going on this season, with, like I said, Bolivia, I've never seen so many people against him. And obviously, like when we saw it at the stadium with people with Levy out banners and stuff like that, and him looking like you could see on the camera when he was watching it, I just think he's going to hopefully buckle up and spend some money. But it's not even just about spending money. It's how we spend that money. What are we spending it on? That's the important thing. Our recruitment has been so damn poor. It's just, that's where we need to financially put in our money, is into our recruitment, and find good people that know who is going to become a great player. But yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be positive this summer. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, coming over to you, Rich, we've got two simultaneous searches going on right now. We've got one for the director of football / managing director, and obviously we've got the actual manager itself that we're trying to appoint. Scott Munn, of course, that starts that job, we're led to believe, very, very shortly, although, look, he's been pictured, of course, with Daniel Levy already behind the scenes. Don't tell that wasn't deliberate, of course. And then we got the reports that they met with Julian Nagelsmann. Give me your thoughts, Rick, on how you see those two searches panning out, and when you would think we'll have some form of movement, because we've known about Conte. You would say his disillusionment. You'd probably say by early January, they were still in the job until latter of that period. Do you think we shouldn't be knowing this soon, Rick, even before the end of the season, or is that being very much too optimistic?
Look, I mean, it is manic, it is chaotic, it is a bit all over the place. But for me, it could be exciting at the same time. So right now, we know that we've got to rip up the kind of the plan that we've had for the last couple of years. with Paratici, right, he's brought in some very good players, right, of a different quality. So we know Romero, we know Bentancur, Kulusevski, Porro now. Udogie looks like a good prospect. Yeah, I still think there's something in Brian Hill as well, but obviously to come. And I think that with a loan or two and some regular game time, I think Sarr could turn into something. So there was an increase in quality in which we've got. Before Paratici, we normally kind of bargain, opportunities. That was the word that we always hear, the buzzword of opportunities. The downside of Paratici was obviously the managerial search. I mean, going for Nuno is one thing, that's a mistake in itself. Gattuso as well. We forgot about that. The whole Fonseca thing where you brought him in, you was about to give him a job, then you're like, nah, we don't want it no more. The Ten Hag. So just before Paratici came in, we were speaking to Ten Hag, but he didn't have enough charisma. So we didn't go for him, but ended up with Nuno, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I don't think so. So what I'm saying is that it could be really exciting to actually go for your number one managerial target, and let's just for an example, and just for the dream of it, let's say it is Nagelsmann. And then you can speak to Nagelsmann about the director of football that he wants to work alongside, or he can work alongside, that is in tune with his philosophy, the way that he wants to play, and that is in tune with how the club want to play. So therefore, you can get everybody all on the same page and kind of announce them together and kind of go, this is how we're moving forward. So for me, it could be really exciting. And when we talk about the announcement, like Christina said there, I think there is a lot going on behind the scenes. You can see, like we said, we saw that picture of Scotty Munn and Daniel Levy jumping on the plane, going to Germany to speak to whoever they were speaking to. So the work has already begun. And to me, it's either going to be in the last week of the season or the week afterwards. And I'm hoping that's the time bracket, because we haven't got time to waste. The transfer window then opens. We've got to start working on pre-season. We've got to start working out who's going, who's being sold, who's going on loan. There's so many things that need to be sorted. So it could be a really exciting time to announce both your number one managerial candidate, let's say, for example, Nagelsmann, and then your number one director of football, let's say, for argument's sake, Ragnick. Right, and them two coming together, they've worked together, they know each other, then they know how to fix Tottenham. They can kind of bring in their philosophy, get them entrenched in the Tottenham way, and all of the history and all of the ways that we like to play and what we want to see going forward, and how we can get success with that style of play and those style of players. And then it could be a really exciting summer for the whole club, and that's what I'm trying to look at right now.
No, look, Rick, I always love your positivity here. I've got to say this, that, ultimately, George, said this to you off air. It's probably the first time during a managerial search, definitely in my time of doing Last Word on Spurs, where it sounds awful saying this, but I don't know if I'm actually genuinely excited for it. I've seen the club, go through now, Mourinho and, of course, Conte, two managers that I was really, really excited about initially, about coming in, winning trophies and changing the mentality and the DNA at Tottenham. And my biggest concern is that ultimately, whoever comes in, is that going to massively change what happens at the top? That's probably the question I want to ask. Whoever you're going to appoint, whether it be manager, director of football, whoever those may come in, because this is the thing now, isn't it? Conte said you can appoint, 15 managers. Nothing's going to change. And I think that is a point where this time around, ultimately, we're relying on Daniel Levy to make a choice that is going to give us some optimism and hope. But we have been here before and we are there again, Jules. So is there a reason that you feel that we should be optimistic about whoever we're going to appoint this summer?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough because I've said it a bunch of times, but I feel like current board and ownership as well, they've maybe been too involved with a lot of footballing decisions, and that might have happened in the past. Again, like you say, bringing in the shiny names of Mourinho and Conte, which I'm going to be totally honest, I loved at the time. I thought it felt like almost like a big step up for the club. But obviously you can just look in hindsight about, the rigidity of Conte's system, the fact is he's quite stubborn with the way he wants his team to play, which is, look, it's clearly worked for him in the past, and I thought he might have been able to get Spurs into a winning way with it. But at the end of the day, with the current ownership we have, we just aren't willing to give him the players to play his specific way, to the extent of being able to win the big trophies that Conte wanted to win. Which I thought at that time maybe we would have done. Maybe we would have brought in the players. And again, I feel like we fell short on some top targets. But I agree with what Ricky said, that some of the players from Paratici I actually think have been great signings, especially compared to previous years. Definitely. I think what's different this time is, like, for me, like I've said that Nagelsmann will be my number one choice right now. And then you've got Rangnick effectively twerking for the job in his interview by saying that, like, look, Nagelsmann's available and he needs to work with the director of football to play like do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, they're effectively both calling for the job. They've worked well together in the past. Nagelsmann's a young manager. You can bring back him in a project. The thing that I like the most about him, if you're going to compare him to Conte and Mourinho, is, yes, you could argue that he's sort of a big name now, but the difference is he is very, very, very flexible in the way he plays in his formations. So, and he said in interviews in the past that his way of football is all about more the philosophies. He has certain patterns and movements that he likes and plays in certain ways, but he alters his formations at every club. At Leipzig, he was playing 3 at the back, but then 4 back on occasions. He was playing a 4-2-3-1 at Bayern Munich. He was playing a different formation at Hoffenheim. And the fact that he brought Hoffenheim from almost relegation to Champions League at such a young age is a massive achievement. So he's already proven that he actually can do good things on a budget. But then again, looking back at Leipzig, the combination of him and Rangnick, a lot of what, especially what Rangnick does, is very data driven, which is probably something we didn't really do under Conte and Mourinho. And it's certainly benefiting the likes of Brighton at the moment. A lot of what they do in their scouting and recruitment system is very data driven. Same with Brentford. And look, they've reaped their rewards so far this season that way. And to the point where Chelsea have actually nabbed a lot of Brighton staff because they're trying to copy that very system. So I think, as well as that, I think Daniel Levy appointing Scott Munn is probably a big deal, and people that are underestimating, because in theory, it should be that Daniel Levy is no longer making the footballing decisions. He obviously needs to sign off on the checks, but at least Scott Munn can be effectively the head of recruitment for the director of football role, for the manager role, and make sure they fit like a glove. Because at the moment, it seemed like Paratici and Conte was probably the only fit together, and they wouldn't really work with anyone else. So I think it can be exciting under those two, especially if they are able to, take this data-driven philosophy, play attacking football, and you don't then need to sign big players for 70 million apiece to play their way of football. And I think there is room for excitement there. It's just whether we can get that over the line or not.
I mean, listen, Nagelsmann is a name that is screaming out, I know, between Ricks and to Jules there. I mean, Christina, coming around to you, another name that's been mentioned, of course, is Arne Slot. We understand Feyenoord are making a strong attempt to renew his contract, although, again, conflicting reports seem to suggest that Slot is actively pushing for a move to Spurs. He is on the verge of winning the Eredivisie with Feyenoord, which is no mean feat given how big Ajax are and what they've done, obviously, in Holland over the last 4 or 5 years. Who do you want, Christina, for you at the moment? Is there one name that's screaming out for you that feels right?
At the I actually don't have a name for myself. Like, I actually don't. Oh my God, I literally, I'm blank on this question. Honestly, I really don't actually have a name that I would actually take at the moment.
Would there have been one if he wasn't going to Chelsea? Would there
I
have
know
been one?
loads of people hyped up on Slot. I know that for sure. But I was so down for company. I can't tell you guys, honestly, how gutted I was that he signed for Burnley, made another contract for Burnley. He was my number one choice. I haven't seen much with Slot, but I know a lot of my lot have said that he would have been absolutely great. They would be really happy to have him. But I just think whoever's going to come, you're risking such a huge, I just feel like everyone's just going to fail. Yeah, it's just your reputation. It is with Jose and Conte. I just can't believe for two of the biggest managers that we have had, they failed. They failed at Tottenham. And it's just, to me, it's just so, like it's just I don't know. You're making a huge risk if you're joining Spurs, basically. That's why it's just so hard for me to make a decision on who I'd want to pick. I just want someone that's young. I really do. I like you guys said, we've got some players that we have signed that are actually good, but we have not seen the best of them. No one's brought that out on them, like to the level that I think that they can be. And I just think that's what it is. It's just someone just needs to come and clean up all of the players right now. And it needs to be someone that I feel is, wants the potential to do the best for Tottenham. And it's just like we've already said, I'll keep repeating it. It's all about the system. Don't stick to what you personally like, that just having a strict system for those players. Do it what is best for each individual. Like, that is all I can say. I just,
I think we all share. Go on, Rick.
No, I just wanted to jump in on the reputation and the risking of the reputation. And maybe it's because I've had my positive pills this week, that I'm seeing things a different way again, right? But you got to remember, we've been in dire straits many a times over our history, okay? When Harry Redknapp turned up, we was at the bottom of the league. We didn't win for I don't know how long. There was possibilities of relegation, and everything was all up in the air. But he came in, he transformed the side, and then suddenly he was being linked with the best sides, including England, in the league. All right. So he was being, we've always had this thing about as soon as a manager does well, they're about to be poached. Same with Martin Yole. He started doing well, and then suddenly he's about to be poached. And we was trying to hold on to him, and then he got sacked at halftime. Do you know what I mean? And same with Pochettino. As soon as Pochettino started doing well at Tottenham, because nobody expects us to do well. Nobody expects us to go and push and to compete, right? Which we have missed. We've missed competing. As well as the style of football, we've missed competing for the highest honours, believing that we can go up against anybody and win and in whatever competition. So as well as there being a risk of reputation, there is also the kind of opportunity to enhance your reputation in an astronomical way. Because if you can do it at Tottenham, then oh my gosh, do you know what I mean? Like, you must be, I was going to swear. I was going to say the dogs. You must be the dogs. I can say that. Everybody knows what I'm saying, right? But you must be astronomical. You must be next level for you to take that side from where they was and for them to be pushing and kind of going on to the next level. And then, so there is that risk of ruining your reputation, but there's also that risk of enhancing your reputation.
You're right, Rick.
And kind
and
for being the one that turned the ship around when nobody else could, including Mourinho and including Conte.
But you know what? On this as well, I think it's actually it's going to be a relief for us that we don't get into Champions League or anything like that now, because I honestly think next season we should just focus on getting FA Cup, in my opinion. I think that's what it should be. Our main focus. I don't think we should be in Europe for next season.
Yeah, I mean, I know where you're coming from with that. I mean, all I would say is that you're back on the point you were saying there, Ricks, is that ultimately you're right. A lot of managers are massively egotistical. They will look at this with arrogance and think, you know what, I can turn this around. And, again, it's not a million miles from the fact that Arsenal, 12 months ago were, bottling the top four, and they're now, in the midst of a title race. We're not too far off. So we shall see. We will. I knew that was going to derail the show. We're nearly close to an hour. The managerial debate, the Recruitment was going to derail the show. We're going to do a quick five on Villa. So what we are going to do is we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audio. Taking that break, you're going to hear from Paddy from the Villa podcast, who gives you his thoughts ahead of Villa to come. And it's not the Paddy that's in this show, by the way, Paddy, before you start getting excited.
That's what I was thinking.
If it is, it might be Paddy. It might be. I don't think it is that Paddy, but we shall see. Right. Villa to come. George, let me come round to you. So Spurs, of course, remaining in sixth at the moment after Brighton failed to pick up any points after a 5-1 defeat to relegation for Everton on Monday night. I think any fan that, watches the Premier League, that's why you watch it, because you get unbelievable results like that no one absolutely saw coming. So given the fact Brighton do have 2 games in hand over Spurs, and with Villa also very much in European contention, Spurs now have the battle of the European place with Aston Villa. It's the battle for Europe this weekend, pretty much is. It's interesting. We've seen Ben Davies come out and say our aspiration is to play European football. We've seen Harry Kane come out and say you can't disrespect any competition that you play in, even given the fact, we haven't won a trophy for 15 years. So, lots of people, we had that debate last week about Europa League, Conference League. We're not going to get into that tonight. But again, people making the point that, we shouldn't be turning up our nose to any form of European competition. Give me your thoughts ahead of Villa, George, if you can, how you see it going, and a prediction, please.
Yeah, I think listen, it's going to be a tough game, no matter what. One, because obviously we've not necessarily been playing the best recently. Obviously, Crystal Palace was a good turning point for us. But I think as well, since Emery's come into Villa, I think he's got Ollie Watkins fired up, and he looks like almost a new man now in that Villa side. And I think just tactically, he's done a great job there. But I think, look, we've sort of hit. I was really worried a couple of weeks ago, but I think we're hitting them at the right time. Watkins has blanked in a couple of weeks. They've had a couple of dodgy results recently as well, especially was it losing to Wolves 1-0 most recently. So, look, listen, the game is there to be won, and I feel like I'd be extremely disappointed if we didn't end up getting a win. It will not be easy. Look, they ruined Doherty's career last year going there. It can be a tough crowd at times as well, but I've got some fond memories of Sonny getting a winner a couple of years ago. So, look, it's definitely possible. I'm just looking forward to see a little bit more of maybe some Mason tinkering as well. Either he keeps it the same that won the game last week, or he even shows his ability even more and he switches it up again and actually plays to the team and our strengths a bit more than just sticking with one system. So that bit I'm looking forward to. But yeah, it's going to be a very tough game. I can only see us, if we're winning, it's going to be probably by one goal.
Okay, George, you got a prediction for this one?
Look, we got a clean sheet last time. I don't think we'll get one again. I'd say a 2-1 Spurs win.
Okay, interesting. George, love to have you back on. We'll be closing it before, obviously, giving you a chance to give us your socials as well. Christina, coming around to you. Villa, they've only won one in their last 4 and only scored 2 goals there, as King Huddle gives us the very kind reference. I mean, I think before they were on a 10-game winning run. I do just wonder, as again, King Huddle reads my mind and says, Dr. Tottenham to see you now. I mean, what do you think about this?
I think, oh God, no, Villa have been absolutely smashing it, man. They've been incredible. I think it's time for us to come and ruin it. I think I got high hopes for us to actually win. I don't know what's going over me, but yeah, I think we might just do it, and I think it's going to be a close one as well. I think Mason, I've got hopes for Mason for this game. I really do. Potentially this could be our last win this season. I don't know, but I think we might just ruin it for Villa, this run that they're having at the moment. And I think my prediction would be a 2-1, a really close 2-1. And I just think Emerson Royale will be the man of the match for that as well.
There you go, on form. Rich, come around to you. Look, they have been utterly transformed under Unai Emery. You have to say that. And again, I'll say this, that had he not been the manager of Arsenal at some point during his career, I wonder how far up the list he would be on the Spurs managerial candidate list, given, his achievements in Europe and what he's done with Seville. When you look at what he's done with Aston Villa, where he's quite frankly utterly transformed their season. They were literally in a relegation battle or heading that way under Gerrard. He's come in there and he had them in the conversation only a couple of games ago, even for the top 4. That's how remarkable the turnaround was. Of course, Villa were outsiders for the top 4, but the fact that Villa are even in the conversation for Europe is utterly remarkable, given where Villa were under Gerrard when he came, and he has done an absolutely incredible job of turning them around. And I have to also say that I'm actually dreading this game. I think it's going to be a really, really tough game. I think Emery's proved himself to be a really tactically astute manager. At the second time of asking, I know many fans at Arsenal didn't feel he was up to the task. But, it won't be easy for Tottenham. Our away record at the moment, we've won 5 of the last 17 away games. We've conceded 35 goals. We're winless in 8. Losing 6 and conceding 10 goals in the last 2 against Liverpool and Newcastle. I know George and Christina have been very positive there. I'm probably asking the right man to be negative, really, in you. But how do you see this playing out, Rick, at Villa Park on Saturday?
Firstly, I think Emery coming in shows you what a good manager with a clear idea and a clear ethos, when he's allowed to go to work, how much that can change a falling like a stone side. Do you know what I mean? So if we are, as Spurs fans, looking for green shoots, I mean, take that as an example. When you've got somebody who comes in that can actually kind of go to work and put his ideas and have something clear, a clear idea of what to do and what to achieve, how things can change and how quickly they can change. So I would take that as a bit of inspiration for us too. I agree with you that it's going to be, and agree with the panel that it's going to be it is a tough game. They've got pace all over the park. They've got, you know, some youth. They've got good players in there, and now they've got a good manager in there that they believe in and that they're following. Especially the comparison to under Gerrard, it was a totally different Villa side. So we are going to go up against a tough Aston Villa side. But for me, and you know, I'm not going to be negative, but for me, after that 1-0 win against Palace, I think the boys will be buzzing. I think they will be happy that at least Mason got a win, because you can see them pushing and playing for them. There's a lot to kind of achieve for Tottenham right now. There's some that are playing for their places as well. You know, there's some that want to be in the shop window. There's a lot of things going for us right now. And I think that we are going to put together a side that is going to go out there and go for it. You know, we've seen our side collapse many a time. We've seen us play in our own half many a time. We've seen us do tiki-taka with the keeper many a time. You know what I mean? Put ourselves under pressure many a time. But I just don't see that happening this week. I see us going out there, and I see us kind of progressing and building on whatever week of work that was before Palace. I see them going in and with a win and with a bit of confidence to kind of go, oh no, you know what, Mace? You do have a good idea. I do understand what you was trying to say, and I'm starting to believe in what you're trying to implement. I think they can push on a little bit more, and I think it's going to be really exciting because, like you said, it's the battle for Europe right now, and I think it's probably the last opportunity for those group of players to be in a game that actually means something. You know, we've been in many games, and every time that we drop off, we're like, oh well, that's it, the season's over. Oh well, that's it, the season's over. Some of us didn't want Europe at all. Some of us do want Europe, you know, but they've got something to achieve. And like Harry and like Davies has said as well, you know, you can't disrespect any competition that we're in. So if they've got Europa League to aim for and to push for and to play for, then I think they're going to go out there and try and put their best foot forward and kind of go out there. And for me, I see us winning like a good. I mean, I know both Georgie and Christina said 2-1s, but for me, it's either going to be a 3-0 or a 3-1 for me. You know,
Blimey.
Look,
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait.
He has had those happy pills, isn't he?
I'm happy being a delusional Tottenham fan sometimes, and I'll never back us to lose. All of you guys know that.
Yeah.
But I just see us pushing forward a little bit because they've got this their last game for them to go out there and show us what they're about and to give us something back. So I think that's what they're going to go out there and do.
Okay, interesting.
As
Rick,
well, just very quickly, just I think just on that, I think what we're forgetting sometimes as well is that we got a lot of our players back from injury. I think that's what was a good thing about Palace game is obviously in the tough week that we had prior to that, like we were still missing Longley, Davis, Basuma is now obviously back. He was on the bench the other day, and he's potentially could feature this weekend. And obviously Emerson again coming back and having a masterclass. I think it's good to actually have a squad there where you feel like you're not necessarily stuck to playing one way, because realistically we were just stuck with Perisic at left back. So we were only stuck with one system and playing a certain way. And I think now we've got a little bit of a healthier squad, obviously still missing the main man Bentancur, but now they have a bit of a healthier squad. I think there's room to sort of look forward to the game a little bit more and, you know, hopefully see a better run of games and better style of play from us.
Absolutely. George, final question I'm going to ask you, Europe or no Europe?
Look, if I'm being honest, and I've said this to everyone, I said personally no Europe, only because I think for me, if it's just in the exact situation we're in right now, considering we need the rebuild, I think you forget with these Europa League and Europa Conference League fixtures, it's tough. It's tough runnings, man. You're playing 2 or 3 times a week for a lot of the season, especially if you go deep into the competitions. And it always doesn't go the way people think. I think a lot of people's ideal situation is that, oh, but if we're in these European competitions, we can play the youth and maybe see a bit more of them. But at the end of the day, when we do that and we swap out the teams a little bit, fans, they can get extremely frustrated because we're not winning these games and we should be winning these competitions. Okay, so then you're asking to play the first team again. And if you're playing the first team 3 times a week, 2 times a week, you're being very detrimental to the domestic cups and the league. So I think right now, for me personally, purely because we're in this big transition phase of a new manager, a new system needs to be played, maybe new director of football, new players, I would rather just be out of Europe so that we can focus domestically, focus on the cups in the league, and really spend the training during the week to implement their ideas. I think that's the main issue we sort of had when Conte first came in. We obviously still had Europe, and he even said himself in these pressers that he doesn't actually get time with the players to work on his ideas. It's always preparation for the next game, rest a day. Preparation for the next game, rest a day. So that's the only reason why I'd say no Europe. But yeah, obviously I'm not going to complain if we do end up in Europa League or Conference League.
Well, listen, we look forward to having you back on, George, for I think as
Love being
Crackers,
here,
was it Dynamo Donuts next Thursday's on the on the Conference League. George, pleasure as always, mate. Where can we find you across the socials? And love having you always back on Last Word on Spurs.
Yeah, man, love being here. Appreciate you inviting me back on. And it's George Achillea across everything. YouTube, obviously, it's been a bit slow recently, but we'll be back on it soon. And yeah, Twitter, Instagram,
We'll be
TikTok,
back. He'll be back. Once the manager comes, he'll be back.
I'll
The
be
manager
back.
is, I
I'll
must
be
add.
back.
Oh man, thank you so much, Christina. Same question to you: Europe or no Europe, and where can we find you across the socials?
No Europe for me. I want a fresh start, completely fresh start for Tottenham now. And like I said, I just want us to focus on cups. I want FA Cup, and that's what I think that our big focus should be for next season. So yeah, no Europe for me, and I'm just on Twitter basically, or on here.
Bless you. Listen, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank
and
you.
Rich, to close it with you, I don't believe Ricky Norwood's going to tell me he does not want European football. I can see his face. There's no way he's going to tell me. Come on, Rich, let's close it with you, bruv. What are you going to say? You're going to tell me.
I'm gonna say Europe, bro. I'm gonna say Europe.
You're going to say Europe. Of course I know that.
And you know, for me, it's like, you know, there's a difference between Europa League and Europa Conference League, or the checker trade, as Jace likes to call it. There is a big difference, but with the squad that we have, with the size of the squad that we have to have a bit more about rotation, and we can keep a core element of the side going in. And as soon as you're winning, you can start to rotate. We've got 5 subs as well. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that learning throughout the games, it is something. Do you know what I mean? I don't think we can disrespect any trophy competition. I think, you know, if we're in it, I think we should go for it, you know, which way that is. And you know, so winning breeds winning. So if we can get onto a roll of things, then fantastic. And if you look at the games that we've had this season, you know, the beginning of the season, we was playing every 2-3 days, and that was just so that we could have the World Cup at Christmas. And then you know, so there's been a concertina of games going left, right, and centre. So I'm hoping that after a summer, after a proper pre-season with a new manager and a clear philosophy, that we can go into the season with Europe and go out there and show us what we're about, because we're owed some good nights in Europe. It's been dire straits for the last, I don't know how long, 4 years. 3-4 years. So, you know, we need to make up for Slavia Prague and Ferrero Rocher and Vitesse and you know, and a lot of
Carrier bag.
You know,
don't do it to me.
Yeah, carrier bag. I forgot about
Lucas
Carrier
Moura.
Oh God.
No, them as well. Lucas Moura. Yeah, you know. So Paco Rabanne. You know, you know. I don't know. But I think that we could use it to our benefit and to the squad's benefit, as well as keeping our core. Do you know what I mean? And using those 5 subs to our advantage. So
I just think it's for me. It's just I think it's only because maybe I've just been burnt too many times of like this hope of like, oh, we're in Europa League, we're in Europa Conference League, we should be winning these competitions, and then we just don't get anywhere near. I think that's what it's like. I've just been burnt too many times with those. But yeah,
I hear you, bro.
I do. Rick's, pleasure as always. I don't know anyone doesn't know where to find you. Where can they find you, Rick?
You know where to find me. I'll probably be on here. Do you know what I mean? Or on Twitter,
of course.
at Ricky J Norwood, which is down there somewhere. On Instagram, which I have been a little bit slow on actually. I've got to get posting again. Glad to you. That's official Ricky Norwood. So yeah, jump on, follow me, and you'll see us on the shows chatting about Tottenham at some point.
Absolutely top man. Listen, from all of us here, from Christina, from George, from Rick's, guys, we've been the last one on Spurs. We'll be back with you on Saturday evening for a post-match reaction to Aston Villa in the battle for Europe. God, that's where it's come to this season. From us all, please keep safe, keep well, and as always, thank you for all your support, and come on, you Spurs.